Fearless.
Provocative. Straight talking.
We pledge to say it like it really is.
With dignity and respect.
Committed to free speech and common sense.
Upbeat and entertaining.
Straight talking and direct.
We may agitate each other and you.
Heartfelt and passionate.
Thought-provoking, provocative and controversial.
Fearless and truthful.
Hello and welcome to The Pledge. So this week we found out that Donald Trump doesn't follow Theresa May on Twitter. In fact, the president-elect, who has 15.8 million followers, only follows 41 people. And who are they? Who are the lucky few? Well, his family, of course, his businesses, including his luxury hotels and golf courses. Oh, and Piers Morgan's there. But where's Nigel Farage? On the show this week, James says we should stop giving the president-elect a hard time. Rachel's calling for a Blair comeback. I'm looking forward to that one, Rachel. Afua's talking about the prospect of immortality. And Nick is telling Broadway stars that all the world is not a stage. But first, it's me. He's been portrayed as an unpleasant bruiser for most of his political career. But Ed Balls could become the Donald Trump of British politics, thanks to Strictly Come Dancing. Let's face it, Ed Balls wasn't exactly a success story. He didn't become Chancellor, a job he was promised by Gordon Brown. He didn't become Labour leader when Ed Miliband got the job. And he lost his seat in Yorkshire at the last election to the unknown Conservative Andrea Jenkins. And yet, thanks to Strictly, the public have recently discovered a different Ed Balls. He's suddenly seen as a likeable, determined man with a real sense of humour. He could even become the worst dancer ever to win Strictly. Warning, some of the scenes you're about to see may cause distress.
Goodness gracious, great balls of fire!
Now, Ed says he's not interested in going back into politics. But just as Donald Trump used his fame from The Apprentice to become president, I think the new Ed should relaunch his political career and become leader of the Labour Party. Ed, if you're watching, this is a moment to consider not what your party could do for you, but what you could do for your party.
So, Greg, help me through with this. The big question is whether Mr. Balls should do a sergeant and should actually exit stage left or whatever it might be because he's getting in the way of what everybody accepts are probably better dancers. I think he should be there as long as he possibly can hang on because this is an entertainment show. Are you saying he should come off the show and go back?
I'm not saying that at all.
But do you think he should come off the show?
Well, I talked to John Sargent about this at the time, and John Sargent decided to come off because he thought if he won...
Were you DG at the time?
No, but if he won... it would destroy the show.
Right.
That actually the show is about dancing. And I suspect the producers are split. One bit they love what Ed Balls is bringing to it, the publicity. I mean, everybody watches it just to see Ed Balls. But the trouble is, if he wins, you have destroyed what the show's about, which is about taking ordinary people, or taking people and teaching them to dance and seeing who's the best. And he's clearly not the best.
I didn't think I was going to... I honestly
You're going to make your will of the people point, aren't you?
No. But you see, this is typical of you and your liberal elite. You don't like what the people want. You didn't like Brexit. You didn't like Trump. You don't want Ed Balls winning Strictly Come Dancing. Guess what? If that's what the people want, that's what the people want.
I haven't said that. What I've said is, once somebody wins the show, not because they can dance, but because they're a bit of a personality, you've put the future of the show in danger.
But it's an entertainment. We're not actually watching for great dancing.
No, but
we want to be entertained.
No, but there are a couple of really good dancers on this year. And suddenly to discover that they don't win because the public en masse like this guy.
But Greg, is your point about his dancing, or is your point that he should become the leader of the Labour Party?
No, my point...
Because he's a good dancer.
No, I
just want to get the facts
No, it's
right.
nothing to do with because he's not a good dancer. Let's get that.
That's clearly my point.
He's certainly got better, and he's obviously lost a pile of weight, which, because it's hard work training for that thing.
I've noticed you've lost a bit of weight too.
I've lost a bit of weight too, but that wasn't from dancing. But no, my point is, in some ways, Trump's changed the game in politics. Suddenly, you've seen that actually, if you are famous and you can get voted by the mass, you can win.
Greg, you know I used to do Dragon's Den.
Yes.
Just thought I'd mention that.
Well, I don't think you're going to be the Prime Minister, but no, what I'm saying is I think Ed Balls was a credible politician. In some ways, he was a very good politician, but he had a pretty bad...
Somebody that
I think you're missing the point, Greg.
image.
I think you're missing the point. I don't think Strictly is really about dancing. It's about Britain. British people like the underdog. That's why they love Ed Balls way more than people who are competent dancers. And that's actually similar to what's going on in politics, because Trump, although he's a billionaire and although he is not exactly part of this left-behind working America, he is the underdog as well. Corbyn, you know, not necessarily a competent leader. People like him because he's a backbencher, he's obscure, he wears bad jumpers, he's the underdog. And I think this whole
there's nothing
populism...
wrong with his jumper.
It's the resurgence of the underdog.
Yes, but do you think that Ed Balls, if he went back into politics, is a different figure to the one he was last time?
Yeah, because when you put Ed Balls out of Strictly and back into politics, he's not the underdog. He's a Harvard-educated, dry economist who, as you pointed out, couldn't even hold on to his constituency seat. And so while he works in the format of Strictly, where he is the most horrendous dancer that will win, and I bet he will win, I don't think they're really that divided over it. I think that they love it. People are talking about it. We wouldn't be discussing Strictly if it wasn't for Ed Balls not being able to dance.
What I think unifies this conversation is the will of the people and how it actually ruins the institution or the country when the will of the people... So look at it. Trump, we're going to talk about Trump in a bit, is a disaster for America. Brexit, which was the will of the people expressed, 17 point whatever it was, is a disaster for Britain, as we heard yesterday from the Alton statement. Ed Balls, if he wins Strictly, will be a disaster for Strictly, but it won't necessarily be a disaster for the Labour Party. So I'm with Greg. I think he would be good for the Labour Party if he came back, but it would break Strictly.
Do you ever talk to normal people?
All the time.
Or do you just wander around this extraordinary family that you enjoy, cabinet ministers and others?
Listen, Nick, you don't talk to normal people.
Of course I do.
You only talk to the people who phone up your show.
Well, they're normal people.
People who phone radio shows are not necessarily normal people.
Well, I think they're probably more normal than Boris and Joe and the rest of them.
When you get personal, you lose the argument there.
Yes. It is. But all right, Nick, let's come back. Let me ask you, do you think, which is the argument I'm making, do you think that Ed Balls is now potentially a more effective political leader because he's been on Strictly?
Yes, in that he's got more popularity. Yes, in that he's got... Because the one thing he had... Just say this, James. The one thing he had was and actually I think it was probably quite fair, he was seen as a bit of a bruiser and a bit of a bully, if I can say that, and not particularly, a bit like my colleague on my right, completely out of tune with what real people were thinking. Now, I think it's almost the other way. It's quite difficult for him to be seen to be taken seriously when he's jumping up and down playing Great Balls of Fire.
But I think he's more electable, but I'm not sure he's better. I mean, nothing's changed. You know, his policies will be the same.
They're the same thing now. If you're known on television to millions of people, that makes you a candidate. And Ed Balls is a candidate. Everyone recognises it now.
He's not electable, but does it make him right for the job?
True. I think this whole conversation is missing the point of why populism is kind of on the rise. The reason people are voting for these popular figures is not just because they look good on their reality TV shows. It's because they feel disgruntled, they feel disenchanted, and there's a sense that this popular person is going to solve their problems. Now, Ed Balls being fun on Strictly, it does not equate to him solving people's problems, and I don't think they're going to look at him as any more likely to just because he's been dancing.
He hasn't set out any manifesto yet.
No, but hang on.
How can we judge him? By the way, I think he's a really good dancer. I mean, to me...
I actually have to say that was better than I thought it was going to be.
Compared to most British men,
of the few I've seen, that's the best I've seen.
But he's got to do the cha-cha-cha this weekend, apparently.
And he has been trained for several weeks non-stop to get that far.
But if you follow...
he's got moves, I
think. But that's not the point. The point is not whether he's a good dancer. The point is, does becoming more famous to the mass of the population make you a more effective and better politician?
If it did, Greg, Mary Berry would be Chancellor of the Exchequer, wouldn't she?
She's not a politician.
No, that's the reality. It's not solely down there. It has to be some nous and ability as well.
Well, you could have made the same point about Trump and the unlikeliness of him being president. He's not remotely qualified or competent for the job. He's just popular.
Can we all now vote? I'm giving Ed Balls a 6 for being the next leader of the Labour Party. What are you giving him?
3.
2.
Afua?
2. It's a 2.
I'll give him 8.
7!
Right, time for me to call for the second Labour comeback of the show. You may say they're damaged goods. Tony Blair for Iraq, George Osborne to a lesser extent for his Project Fear budget. You may howl the toxic twosome. But I hope that the rumours are true about a Blair project to galvanise the centre ground against the Brexiteers, and that George Osborne will be on the same side too. We now know that the bill for Brexit is nearly £60 billion. So we need strong voices to insist that the British public is given an opportunity to judge whether the deal they get after Article 50 is better than the deal they have at the moment. We need powerful, internationally known politicians to make sure that the machinery of government isn't going to be consumed by Brexit. And we need articulate, experienced operators to make sure we don't end up worse off economically, politically and diplomatically. So come back, Tony and George. And yes, even Peter Mandelson, the best trade commissioner the EU has had. All is forgiven.
OK, so let's just get this right. So we need a liar, a toxic man that everybody hates, that went down as history as somebody who effectively lied to the nation, took us to war. Yeah. And you think that out of the 17 million people who wanted to stay in Brexit, that's the best you can do, Rachel?
It's the best we have available at the moment.
That's
I mean,
sad.
who else is coming forward? We've got the hard right wanting a hard Brexit on one side, and we've got the hard left wanting hard left stuff on the other side, and there's absolutely nothing going on in the middle. Theresa May is executing Brexit, so I think it's a brilliant opportunity.
A brilliant
opportunity
Strong
for an
word.
experienced politician like Blair. Listen, I'm not mad about the man myself, but I think it's fantastic that he's prepared to come back and articulate the position of
Rachel, I'm just
16.5 million
really
people
the
who
best
are in.
we can do.
We're facing a catastrophe, James.
No, we are, but
In his own
I'm
words.
just disappointed that he is the only person we can think of to get us out of this
you
mess.
then? You come and get us out of the mess.
No, I want to do Strictly first. I'm not doing it until I do. No, I'm just surprised that, you know, when I look at the media, I mean, they detest him. Every article I've seen.
Can I just say it's not just him? There's going to be a coalition that's going to congeal quite soon. It's going to be a lot of very important people, plus Osborne,
but he's not saying he's
Mandelson.
coming back
Even
into
John
politics.
Major might come in.
And actually, we
Afua.
need, first of all, to clarify that you can't necessarily say that he's a liar, even though a lot of people don't like him. But, Rachel, I can see your logic. So what you're doing is you're saying Greg's suggesting that we just make politics a big popularity contest. So you're saying, I know, let's just choose the most unpopular politician anyone can
I'm
think
not
of.
saying we should choose
He's
him.
the answer.
He's saying, I'm prepared to come back into public life because this is really important.
Well, I read your column this week, and, you know, so at the risk of being a Jewy 30-year-old bragging about my age, I remember I was doing my A-levels when Tony Blair got elected. No, actually, I was doing my GCSEs. I was just doing my GCSEs.
Stop showing off, Afua.
When Tony Blair got elected.
I was still in the
The point that I want to make,
Greg was just
I
clicking his pen.
remember 1997 so well, because it was my first moment where politics really meant something to me. And I remember coming into school and everybody being excited and energised, and everybody kind of investing in this sense of hope. You know, it was a real turning point. And I think for my generation, Tony Blair represents the long, slow, painful disillusionment that we have in politics today, because all the things he promised us that awoke us politically turned out to be bogus. You know, and the Iraq War is not to be written off. It radicalised the generation, and it alienated the generation. And the idea that he could be the solution when he represents so many people feeling alienated by politics, it just doesn't make any sense.
Don't shoot the messenger.
Myself, yeah.
OK, all you're doing is shooting the messenger. What I want us to talk about is the message that Tony Blair might be able to bring across. Greg?
Well, I go back a long way with Blair. I mean, I helped fund his original leadership campaign, you know, back when you were in primary school. And then, of course, I fell out with him massively when I was running the BBC and had an enormous bust-up, and thanks to him, I got kicked out of the building. I have to say...
So nothing personal, then?
Nothing personal, no. So I should be the most hostile to this proposal. And I would have been for a long time until I watched the Brexit discussions and the Brexit campaign. And I thought, God, if Blair had been leading Remain, we'd still be Remain. Because Blair, for whatever you like about him, was a brilliant politician.
He was.
And nobody nobody in that Brexit campaign, I think, saw that in the referendum, saw that Brexit could win, and they certainly ran a terrible campaign. Blair wouldn't have run a campaign like that. So there's a bit of me says, much as I dislike the guy, and much as I don't trust him, actually, we might need him.
Yeah. And before, I want to spike Nick's guns, because I think I'd like to play a clip of actually what Tony Blair's saying before you say he's trying to deny the will of the people and calling for a second referendum.
So,
really? You've got time to
anyway.
rethink now? Let's hear what Tony Blair has to say.
This is not about an elite overruling the people. It's about saying, let's take this decision. As we see its consequences, let's scrutinise them, debate them, and keep all our options open. And that is the sensible thing to do in these circumstances. Those of us who believe this is a catastrophe for the country, and I do believe that, by the way, for political as well as economic reasons, we've got no right to force our view on everyone else, but we do have the right to carry on debating and arguing and persuading.
This is really important. Yesterday, we heard that Brexit's going to cost $60 billion. We were on course for a surplus in 2020 if we hadn't had Brexit. Now we are having Brexit. We're 122 billion down on every economic measure. Growth is going to be down 2.4%.
I find the people that you've chosen absolutely extraordinary. Tony Blair, George Osborne, Peter Mandelson,
John Major.
Did you forget Gordon Brown and Hannibal Lecter? Presumably we can bring them in as well.
Bring them in.
Blair has
anything
no
at this point.
Listen to what Blair has no currency at all. He is at the very best economical with the truth. I'll just leave you one. No, hold on. It's all very well signed. Chilcot. Right, that does. As for George Osborne, he probably engineered this Brexit in the first place.
That is not true. He opposed the referendum.
With a ridiculous apocalyptic budget that just had people saying, do you know what, stop bullying me like that. If you think they would actually, I think it was James's point, they would actually harden it even more. Now, does it need someone with a great deal of skill, someone like that to come in and to work out and to make sure? I don't disagree with that. I'm on your side there. But the ones you've chosen are risible.
You're just aiming at these politicians again for their reputation. Well, now what I said is we need articulate politicians to articulate the case for the centre ground, and then very, very, very soft Brexit.
Is it really about the campaign? I mean, I'm asking it as a question. You know, I agree that I think Tony Blair would have run a better Remain campaign than the shambles that we had, and I'm as much in the Remain camp as you. But I question whether it really is about the campaign and how well it's run, and actually whether that would have made any difference. You know, for me, when I talk to people who feel strongly about Brexit, I can't imagine a campaign that would have actually changed their minds. You know, it was a protest vote. It was their chance to stick a finger up at the establishment. It was based on all of these deep-seated grievances. I don't think that they would have fallen for the kind of slick political spin that we saw from Mandelson and Blair, and that would have changed their minds.
But you didn't have to. I mean, they only just won. No, they only just won. 2% going the other way, and you've got the thing square. And honestly, I think a different sort of campaign for Remain would have won this.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
I don't know. We're a divided nation, you know. People I speak to on both sides are so deeply entrenched in their positions, and it feels like that division is real, and it's not so much about political manipulation.
The campaign that would have won it is
like
security. We're safer together. We're safer within Europe than we are out. We're safer against terrorism. We're safer against international, economic, or whatever it might have been. As it was, that was never played. That was never really played. I really think, having spoken to tons of people on the radio about this for many, many weeks and months, that would have been, as Greg said, if you pick the right target. And I think security might have been. It would have been possibly a totally different picture.
Yeah, I mean, the problem Blair is going to have if he does this role.
It's not going to just be Black Brexit. It's going to be the centre ground for
the centre ground. But the problem he's got is that for the whole period of when he was Prime Minister, we embraced globalisation. And actually, this is what's happened is a reaction against globalisation, because globalisation in both America and in Britain. Because what globalisation means in Britain is that a lot of people in certain towns and cities lost their jobs. Exactly the same as what happened in America. You know, that you've seen Trump got elected because he appealed to those people who suddenly said, where's my future? They've closed the steelworks, they've closed the iron ore, they've closed... What do I do now?
Well, I think it's time to move on to me. Let's talk about Mr. Trump. The more I think about it, the more I think Donald Trump might be exactly what America needs. The morning after he was elected, £37 billion was wiped off the value of the FTSE. However, by the end of the day, it had rallied, and last week the dollar climbed to its highest level since 2003. The markets have come round to President Trump, and you know what? So have I. he's a successful businessman, and it looks like he's going to treat America like a business too. He's interviewing candidates for his team, not being rushed by the media. And since being elected, he's made much more measured statements about his policies. They do say new broom sweep cleaner, and I'm glad we haven't got another career politician in the White House. Yes, he's a maverick, and yes, he's something different. But that's exactly why I think President Trump should be good for America.
I don't know how we can even begin this. I mean, look, there's two issues here. One is you're assuming that because the stock market's doing well, that means he's a success. Well, I mean, the stock market is short-term money. He says he's going to borrow a great pile of cash. He's going to spend it on infrastructure, so certain shares are going booming. It's nothing to do with the strength of the economy in 10 years' time. It's to do with what it looks like over the next couple of years. You know that. You've got businesses, I've got businesses. It's all short-term. The second thing you're saying is, it doesn't really matter what you say in an election campaign. You can dump it all later as long as you've won. Now, I know
what's new, Greg?
No, I don't think that is true. You see, I think, by and large, politicians are quite honourable, actually. They do, and sometimes they get pushed off course. But to actually reverse everything you've said in a campaign, to say, I've won now, I can now do anything I like, I think is the most depressing view of politics I've ever heard.
Well, all I can tell you is, Greg, he, to me, I was not a fan, and I was not a supporter, and I wouldn't have voted for him. But now that he's in, I've actually come round, and I think people are starting to see, he's quite measured, some of the comments he's making. I think as a businessman, the one thing that I will give him credit for is you cannot be as successful as Donald Trump and being on your own. It's down to the people you hire and having the ability to pick...
Successful? When you say successful, I'm like, are we talking about the same person?
I think he's going to select the right people to work with him to achieve the things that he's saying. And I think, already there are people who have not supported him through the campaign. And I've been quite impressed that he's been prepared to go to those people. Romney, whether he comes or not is a different issue. But the fact that he's still prepared to go to those people just tells me, actually, there just might be something in this guy that could make the difference in America.
James, can I spin through his record for a second just to refresh the viewer's memory? OK, successful businessman, inherited money from his father, declared himself a bankrupt, said he didn't pay taxes and that was a smart move.
Defraud, has
had to pay
has
had to fork out $25 million to poor students, SAPs, who bought his Trump University.
That's on
the debit side. Let's look at the credit side. He's going to scrap the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He may not sign up to the climate change deal. It's probably going to save the planet and all our bacon. He's going to put up. He's going to put up walls and say that we don't have Chinese imports because he's promised the blue-collar workers their jobs aren't going to be taken away by cheap imports. Not forgetting the small fact that basically China owns America and owns most of America's sovereign debt, so it can't really treat China like that. So those are the good things, and that makes a good businessman. I think
we should take James on his own logic, right? You want him to run America like a company. What kind of company is taking over America? I've got a great clip from the former chief White House ethics lawyer, Norman Eisman. Take a look at this.
So the overall situation, it's like a hostile takeover of the United States government by the Trump organization. It's profoundly concerning. The president-elect loves to say he wants to build a big, beautiful wall. He needs to build a big, beautiful wall of trust. And the trustee would take the proceeds, put it behind the wall, and then buy and sell in investments that are unknown to Mr. Trump.
On the assumption that it's okay for somebody to run the United States like a business, which I don't agree with, you can't have it both ways. If that's what you want, surely you want somebody who is a competent businessman, an ethical businessman, a businessman who's shown he's able to build trust with his consumers. I can't think of anyone more the opposite than Donald Trump.
Afua, over 50% of the American population voted for the guy. So it's
That's not actually true. That's not actually true. Actually, Hillary Clinton got more votes.
Okay, by what? Like 2%,
No,
3%?
well, yeah, but that's not to be
Several
sniffed at.
million more voted for Hillary Clinton than voted for him.
all right.
Now, if that had
1%
happened the
or
other way round, you could imagine the fuss he'd be making today. I got the popular vote. Well, he didn't get the popular vote. And there's some suggestion that in some states the vote was actually fiddled anyway.
Okay, but we just had this conversation a few minutes ago and said that because it's the will of the people, because the people came out and voted, you know, why can't we let the man, give him a chance?
Because elitists like Greg and Rachel and even Afua don't believe in that, James. You're absolutely right to make that point. My only concern in what you say is, and by the way, he's not
So you think Donald Trump isn't an elitist? I mean, he hasn't lived like a man of the people over the years.
How can you be standing in front of gold doors like that? In what possible way can that be seen in the picture of the year with Mr. Farage? He's not in yet, and I take great heart from someone like you, because what I think and what I find distinctly un-British, actually, is give the bloke a chance. I know you don't like it, but he's won. Give the bloke a chance. Let's all see where we are in 6 months. I think power will take some of the rough edges off him. You can already see that. You're absolutely right. He's making conciliatory gestures to people like Mitt Romney, who they just clashed early on. The one concern is, I don't know you can run a country like a business, because you can be fairly...
He can.
Yes, I'm just saying, you can be fairly headstrong even, you can be fairly didactic, you can bang the table. You have to be more, I would sense, collegiate, and that's the big hurdle I don't know whether Donald Trump can cross.
You can't, but all I can say, Nick, is to run a business the size of the business that he runs, you employ thousands of people, and you can't get to that position. Now, I take all the points about the business, but, you know, yes, he inherited 50 million, but he did turn it into 5 billion. So what I'm saying is that takes some skill and ability.
We don't actually know how much he's worth exactly, because he has refused to file all of his tax returns.
But the snippiness he showed this week to the what they call anchors or news presenters when he went round to have the meeting, and he absolutely went after him. And then he went after the New York Times, and then he said, actually, it's a great paper. And during the campaign, he banned the Washington Post. He said, I'm getting rid of the Washington Post, and everybody should... If you're the president of the... If you run a business like that, sure, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, fine, it's your own. If you're the president of the United States, you can't be upset by an article in the Washington Post or the New York Times.
So you're saying he's temperamentally unsuitable to be president?
I said I want to see 6 months. I'm saying I don't know. You can't be... You can't... I think Hillary Clinton said, you can't... God, I never thought I'd... You can't... I feel bad now. You can't be upset by a tweet if you're the president of the United States. You can't be upset by a Washington Post article.
Damn straight you can't.
No.
But also, your point about power will rub off his rough edges. That's absolute nonsense, Nick, and you know it. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And he's now going to be the most important, powerful man on the planet.
Can we just have a look?
Man on the planet who says that being president does not mean he, by any jot or tittle, has to alter his business practices, and he has actually carte blanche to do what he wants because he's president.
But let me just show you a clip where he's just coming out and laying out exactly some of the policies that he wants to implement. Just take a look at this.
My agenda will be based on a simple core principle: putting America first. As part of this plan, I've asked my transition team to develop a list of executive actions we can take on day one. On trade, I am going to issue our notification of intent to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. On energy, I will cancel job-killing restrictions on the production of American energy. On regulation, I will formulate a rule which says that for every one new regulation, 2 old regulations must be eliminated. So important.
Clear, precise, to the point, you know, has made, you know, to me, he comes across
and probably won't be able to do any of them.
No, you can't say that, Greg. Give the man a chance.
Yes,
you know, he hasn't even started the job yet.
He has started indicating he's going to appoint his close family members to key positions. Did anyone see Ivanka trying to sell her, I have to say, a fairly hideous bracelet? I mean, just the first opportunity you get to get on TV and you're selling your products, you know, to me that's a great indication of what we've got to come.
Well, I believe we should give the man a chance.
Yeah.
I think he'll do well. I think he will do
well. How define well?
No World War III.
That's for next time. That's for next time, right? It's me next, and I'll be defending the right to try to defeat death. Imagine this, your body packed in ice, your blood replaced with medical antifreeze, and then stored head down at minus 130 centigrade in tanks shared with other similarly frozen bodies. You have no idea, if you wake up, who you'll be and what you'll remember. This sounds like something from a sci-fi novel, but it's here and it is happening. Last week, a 14-year-old girl became the latest child to have her body cryogenically frozen when she tragically died of cancer. The cost at a US-based facility, £37,000. News of the most recent case sent us into a tizzy of ethical soul-searching. We're told this is an exploitative guise to relieve desperate people of thousands of pounds. I don't agree. Those who sign up to cryogenics know there is only a chance of it successfully bringing their bodies back to life. And that's all they're paying for, a chance.
Afua, I mean, I thought you were a sensible woman. I really did. I mean, it's not sci-fi, it's horror, isn't it? It's really sad. It's repellent.
What is it you find so horrific about it? Is it the fact that someone like this girl died? Because that is tragic, but that's not because of cryogenics.
No, she did. She died of cancer, and which is very sad. But Afua, newsflash, we're all going to die, and that's it. This idea that there's going to be a hereafter after our mortal remains are have gone and our souls have left our body. You didn't mention the soul. What happens to the soul when they put her in a freezer head down?
Okay, let me clarify what I think about this, because I'm not saying that I would like to be cryogenically preserved. In fact, I don't think I would. It's easy to say that when you're young and you're healthy, but I'm quite comfortable with death as part of the natural cycle. But what I'm saying is that there are people who want, for whatever reason, feel that when they're dying, they want to believe they have a chance of coming back. I'm saying that is here, whether you like it or not. That technology is already being used. So it's not a question of whether we're okay with it. It's what we do about the fact that it's here.
Can I read out something that Cryonics, which is, I think, the company used, says on its website? Cryonics is a visionary concept, at least they use the word concept, that holds out the promise of a second chance at life with renewed health, vitality and youth. I mean, really, if you believe that, you are... Even the people who work there say there's not even a 1 in a million
Is your problem that you think that it is a bad thing objectively to do, or is your problem that you think it's exploiting,
Just one more thing.
Exploiting the wishes of dying people?
Yes, because I want everyone else to talk. I mean, Steve Jobs said something so right. He said, death is the best invention of life. Death is the thing that allows renewal, and it's the greatest change agent there is. Of course it is. We just have to accept it's going to happen.
Just quickly, before I bring everyone else, I just have to say one thing, because we've been talking about the Cryonics Institute, and you read out what they say, but they also do say, and I think very honestly, on their website, when it says, can you guarantee success, they say, sadly, we can't. No one can guarantee success because no one can guarantee the future. No one can predict scientific progress with certainty. And so for me, they're not trying to deceive or exploit people. They're being very frank about the fact this is new technology. No one knows how it's going to evolve. And that's why I'm saying people are buying the chance. They're not buying a guarantee.
It's taken virtually 2 series of the pledge, and finally I agree with Rachel Johnson. We've actually found it. I had to question you on your introduction to this, Afua, because you actually use the words, you wake up. You don't know that you wake up. There's no proof that you wake up.
Imagine.
Well, and the catastrophic damage you do to your organs by taking all the blood out is phenomenal. To pack you in dry ice, I actually... research this, and it's interesting when I did it on the radio show, because most people don't like to talk about death, let's be honest about it, but the calls about this absolutely poured in. So we did a bit of research on it. You will actually burn your skin off in the dry ice they will pack you in. So, and we have no idea what the mental damage will be. So your organs are damaged, you've burnt your skin off, you don't know what sort of brain facility you have, and you'll wake up 100 years from now not knowing anybody. Now, sell that to me as a good idea, because I can't quite see it.
I'm going to tell you what the 14-year-old girl said. She said, I'm only 14, and we can't identify her.
No,
I'm only 14 years old, and I don't want to die, but I know I am going to. I think being cryopreserved gives me a chance to be cured and woken up, even in hundreds of years' time. I don't want to be buried underground. No. I want to live and live longer, and I think that in the future they may find a cure for my cancer and wake me up. I want to have this chance. This is my wish. I'm not saying I agree with that wish or I would share it, but I think we need to respect the fact nobody can put themselves in the shoes of somebody else who's dying.
This is Dr. Frankenstein, not Doctor Who.
You know, who gets to decide what's science fiction, what's Dr. Frankenstein? Who are we to decide? The science is evolving. It's evolving rapidly. And I don't think it's for any of us to sit here based on our own preconceptions and our own prejudices and our own squeamishness, because a lot of this is squeamishness as well, and dictate other people's choices about their future life.
Yeah, but I find it very difficult to take this seriously, in all honesty. I really do. I mean, I'm just thinking, all right, say 1960, you were cryogenically preserved. You come back now. You know, you've gone from John Kennedy to Trump. I mean, God, what a shock. But you imagine you come back after 100 years. You know nobody, there's nothing there. I just find it bizarre. And, I mean, there's one or two people I wouldn't mind chronically preserving. You know, you're one of them.
But you want to do it now.
Yeah, I'd rather do it now than wait. I think you've got more chance.
I'm actually going to agree with you.
Because it's a business problem.
So what happens if the business goes bust?
I'm looking in it from the point of the mother. So you have a child, and the child unfortunately dies. And like any parent, I can see that there is this glimmer, and I accept it's purely a glimmer of hope, that maybe one day, that maybe she could come back. We don't know. There's no certainty. There's no guarantee. But as a parent, to imagine that there could be that opportunity, I can somehow rationalise why. I mean, from a humanitarian perspective, I don't agree with it. And I agree with Greg. You know, imagine coming in 100 years later, the world's different, everybody's died, you don't know anybody, what state will it be? I can see all of those issues. But I can also position her as a child or the mother and saying, if I could bring my daughter back, it's never happened before. It sounds a bit crazy, a bit scientific, but you know what? I can see why they would do it.
Lord preserve us. If heaven forbid, if your daughter was in a similar situation, would you pay to give her that peace of mind?
Just remind you that, you know, not so long ago, organ transplants were talked about in exactly the same way. People said it's Frankenstein. You know, they said you're going to be a different person if you have somebody else's lung or heart.
Hold on.
Now they
show me where they've successfully brought a pig back from the dead. Because all of that they tried with animals, with pigs and mice. When you show me a mouse that's been brought back from the dead or a pig, then I'm with you.
It's clear that that technology and that science is not there yet. But the point I'm making is that things advance at a rapid change. And do you know what? The problem I have with everything that everyone is saying, except for James, who I'm delighted agrees with me, the problem with what you are all saying is that you're kind of digging your heads in the sand, right? And so we have a situation where, take this 14-year-old girl, the Human Tissue Act doesn't apply because when it was written in 2004, no one envisaged people would want to be cryogenically frozen.
And it should be
NHS trusts have no guidelines at all whether they're meant to cooperate or not. The bridging company that prepared her body, which is a non-profit organisation, from the judgment, it looks like they made a bit of a hash of it. You know, they weren't very organised. There's no regulation. So there are no rules. The courts are struggling. The NHS is struggling. And instead of us grappling with this, because more people are going to want to do it, we're all sitting here going, oh, my God, it's Frankenstein. I don't like it. You know, get with it. It's here, and we've got to deal with it. Otherwise, there will be genuinely unethical situations arising.
Well, that's, of course, what the judge said. The judge said there's no guidelines for this, and we need some guidelines. And that's dead right. I mean, clearly you need somebody to look at it and say, look, do we accept that people can do this? I personally can't conceive of how you could approve it.
No, I can't. But I'm just saying, but I don't think we should disrespect somebody.
No, but surely your job as a parent, if you're in that terrible position of you've got a child with a terminal illness, surely your job is not to offer them this sort of hope.
Did you not? If you read the judgment, this 14-year-old girl, the judge said she had a very strong mind. It wasn't an idea that anyone else had given her. She'd been researching it independently. She felt independently that's what she wanted to do. So actually, you're not talking about a parent not giving them the idea. You're saying that a parent should say to a dying child who's decided independently that this is what they want, you can't have this thing that you've pinned your hope on. I mean, would you feel comfortable with being in that position?
I would say I would see my job as to help my child go through this terrible experience. But I mean, it's not to say, oh yeah, you'll be all right, we'll just freeze you and you'll come back in 100 years' time. It seems to me it is fantasy world.
Well, nobody's saying she is going to come back, but there may be that glimmer, that minute chance.
There's a chance.
We will end it there. This is a debate that we'll have to put into deep storage to see if it's thawed at a later date. Forsooth, panel, forsooth. It's my turn next, and I'll be explaining why I simply can't suspend my disbelief anymore. There were some unscripted lines at a Broadway show the other night. A hideous lovey called Brandon Victor Dixon, no, me neither, decided to seize the moment and treat theatre-goers to an impromptu political lecture. His reasoning was, as incoming US Vice President Mike Pence was in the audience, he felt emboldened to give everyone the benefit of his views on the presidential election result. Well, here's my critique of Mr. Dixon's performance. Get off the stage, you hectoring bore. You're merely an actor, so just stick to speaking the lines. You have neither the wit nor the wisdom to pen yourself, and try not to bump into the furniture as you exit stage right. Or in your dreary case, that should probably be stage left.
Nick.
Is that a sign of contentment and agreement? Yes.
Do your history homework. Theatre is political. In ancient Rome, the whole point of theatre was as a place for people to take on the emperor. It's evolved as a way that people can challenge the political establishment, so I can't think of anything more appropriate immediately after the most seismic election in American history for the cast to take on the decision of the vice presidential candidate to come and watch the play. And secondly, it's a play that celebrates the diversity, the rich history of immigration and triumph over adversity of the United States. So the subject matter was completely relevant. And thirdly, before you come in, have you watched the speech?
Have I? Yeah, yes, in fact, we should do that. That's a good idea. But just finish your point and then we will, so everybody knows or needs some reminding.
How could you call it hectoring? How can you? It was the most eloquent, gracious. It wasn't aggressive at all. It wasn't hectoring at all. It was extremely polite. He said repeatedly, "You're welcome here. We're glad you're here to listen." I thought it was delivered beautifully. I thought it was award-winning.
I will answer your 3 points in reverse order after we show the audience exactly what we're talking about.
Vice President-elect Pence, we welcome you and we truly thank you for joining us here at Hamilton and American Musical. We really do. We, sir, we are the diverse America who are alarmed and anxious that your new administration will not protect us, our planet, our children, our parents, or defend us and uphold our inalienable rights, sir. But we truly hope that this show has inspired you to uphold our American values and to work on behalf of all of us. All of us.
I can actually answer all the points, all your 3 points with this. You talk about using it in the days of the Emperor. That's totally different because the Emperor was allowed a response. Mike Pence wasn't allowed to respond. He's heading towards the door with 2 members of his family, his daughter and his nephew. He's as he's leaving. He's stopped. He is lectured by this actor.
That is not hectoring.
He's lectured, and he has no opportunity to respond. Tell me how that's fair.
I think if it had been an aggressive speech which accused him of unwarranted things, then it would be a different matter, and maybe I would agree. But no, I thought it was very gracious, it was fair.
So he's not allowed to the theatre.
You've got to acknowledge the context, Nick. This is just after an election that made people scared to leave their house. People were afraid. No, you can't dismiss that. You cannot dismiss that. Trump said things during the campaign that made people fear to wear their hijab in the street, to be an African American, to be openly gay. They were afraid. And that is the context in which he was speaking. He was saying there are people here who need to be reassured because this is a scary time.
There was no way that the incoming Greek vice president was allowed to respond, and that's not fair.
Nick, I don't think you understand what's been happening in America.
Respectfully, I was there during it.
Sure, but the whole point is this was all the old political protocol has gone by the board. Trump was, we've already seen, as Jamie said earlier, Trump won an election by saying a load of things that he didn't believe because he thought that would make him popular. And the divide in America at the moment is massive, and actually, in some ways, it might be quite good. We might see a bit of a political debate.
Hold on.
At places like this that we don't see elsewhere. But
just remind me, what political expertise or schooling or grounding does Brandon...
I thought you were going to say Trump.
What is going to be next? Matilda's views on the Brexit?
No, you're a great...
We don't twank his views on the Greek financial crisis.
Nick, you're the man
I don't go to a show for that.
You're the man who says all the time the views of the people. Well, he and that cast are some of the people. And what they're saying is, this is what we think. And I hope that continues. I hope that actually we do have these... What you're objecting to is that actually they're more liberal than the president and the vice president, and probably more liberal than you. If it had been the right saying that, you'd have been sitting here applauding.
No, I wouldn't.
What did Mike Pence say about how he felt about it?
He said it was okay, actually.
He said to his daughter,
he said he was fine with it.
He said to his daughter, "This is what liberty looks like."
Yeah.
I think it's. Don't you all find it hilarious that this very touching episode in a New York theatre has triggered Nick Ferrari like this? You would think this was fantastic.
No.
You turn out to be a massive snowflake, you know, with a terribly thin skin, who leapt to the defence of Mike Pence, who took it fine. It was no biggie for him. He said to his daughter it was. And
I think
it's
great.
great.
Up to others to judge the approach.
It was in a theatre. It's great to me. Let me finish.
Yes.
That the fourth wall came down like that in such a fabulous way. Admittedly, he was reading. I wish he'd memorised those lines. The fourth wall came down brilliantly before one brick in the big, beautiful wall went up. And I think, hallelujah, and God bless America.
And again, to my central point, which is this man has no political grounding whatsoever.
So what?
Why do we care?
But neither does Mr. Trump, and he's become the president.
He's won. He's won. James, we've not heard from James.
I'm a bit surprised why you're so wound up, because haven't you seen that dozens of times where at the Oscars, you know, the actor will come out, you know, take a trophy and use that as a political opportunity to give his view? I've seen that so many times, and I think in this particular example, I agree with Greg. This was an unprecedented event in America where people felt really passionate. He's got an opportunity. He's standing there. The guy happens to be there in front of him. And the fact that he wants to express a view or an opinion, why is that such a bad thing?
Let me read you what President-elect Trump said. Our wonderful future VP Mike Pence was harassed last night at the theatre by the cast of Hamilton. Cameras blazing. This should not happen. The theatre must always be a safe and special place. The cast of Hamilton was very rude last night to a very good man.
Why don't you read us what Pence said?
What
appropriate?
Well, what he said was that it's up to others to judge whether it's appropriate. But Donald Trump is not allowed a view now.
No,
This is what we're saying.
No, but Donald Trump goes on.
No,
what Donald Trump goes on to say is, I don't think much of the show anyway.
Yes, and the cast and producers of
Hamilton.
Hamilton.
It's the most successful show in the New York
which is here,
for the last 10 years.
It's highly overrated. Should immediately apologise. I love getting that.
I mean, he shoots from the hip on every occasion.
Okay, but we're talking about Pence, though. But what I'm saying is the guy gave an opinion to Pence, who was in the audience, and he was, he understood that clearly he was passionate about the points that he was making.
Tickets are roughly $600-700 a pop, right? I'm not, because I'm not, but if say I'm a Republican and I go with my wife or girlfriend or whatever, so I've shelled the thick end of $1,500, cabs and a bit. I've spent $2,000, right, to watch this show, and at the end I'm effectively told my vote is worthless.
You know, I would go further. I would say not only did he have the right, did that actor Dixon have the right to say that, I'd actually say he has a responsibility to do it. You know why?
No.
You know why? Because Mike Pence is going to the theatre in New York. He's enjoying the liberal, creative, free atmosphere that America has created. He chose to do that. You can't pick and choose. You want that. What comes with it is that people are going to defend their right to be free,
so he's not
to
allowed
feel
to
safe,
enjoy himself.
to have liberal values.
He can, but
if you want to enjoy, that, you have to take what comes with it. And actually, he was not just speaking on behalf of himself.
The rules of the game have changed. Right. They've changed because of the election we've just had and the way in which Trump won it. And we accept he won it.
Freedom of speech.
He won it by saying what he fancied when he fancied. So why can he not give the same right to them?
You of all people saying that an actor can't get up on his hind legs and say something that was only inclusive.
Were we all in support? If you bring it back to the UK, I think it was the end of Hamlet that Benedict Cumberbatch chose to lecture us all about the migrant scandal, despite the fact that he was just trying to see a bit of show. Is that appropriate?
Have you seen it?
We're in a free country, luckily still.
You argued against that.
No, I went
on the pledge.
I said he was a lovey.
You argued against that on the pledge some months ago. You said stop these dreary lovies. Benedict Cumberbatch and that fellow wandering around Calais with a cat.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Jude Law. You argued that on the pledge. You can't do this. You're a flip-flopper. The lady is returning.
The woman's right prerogative to change her mind. In this case,
is outrageous,
in this
Johnson.
case, after Trump, everything's changed. All the rules are different rules of the game.
You know, sometimes it takes our cultural icons to protect us from normalising bigotry.
Brandon Victor
That's
Lewis.
That play is iconic. It's one of the most decorated plays in Broadway history.
And he
is a cultural icon, and especially right now.
And he did say he was saying it on behalf of the whole cast. And
they
he just had it written it. They'd all
It was written by Miranda, wasn't
Right,
it?
panel, no hectoring now, no hectoring now. Enough disagreement, enough conflict. Instead, we need to celebrate the love of two people who found each other in these challenging times.
I see the crystal raindrops fall, and the beauty of it all is when the sun comes shining through to make those rainbows in my mind. When I think of you sometimes, and I want to spend some time with you, just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. Building castles in the sky. Just the two of us. You and I.
James, I know your views on Brexit, I know your views on Trump. I've never really got your views on Nigel Farage as an individual, as a bloke. Where do you stand on Nigel?
You know, I'm not a huge fan, but I do admire that he came out at a time when nobody could imagine under any circumstances that Britain would leave Europe. And he was the one guy who came out with a view, with a passion, with no resources, with no huge party, with no huge budget. And you know what, Nick? He actually pulled it off. He did something that nobody thought was even possible. So you have to give him some credit. I think the man has got some degree of substance in what he does and what he believes in. What does he do from here? I don't know. Right. But I think whatever he does, I think Britain should decide whether he should become the ambassador, not Trump.
And his celebratory party this week in the Ritz, the only event Rachel Johnson's not been to in London for 3 years. That's it from us this week. Make sure you tell us who's talking sense and who's not got a clue by following us on Twitter. We'll see you next time.